Welcome to the webinar RegTech Insights, the Future of Compliance. Now, in this webinar, we would like to give you an insight in the innovative developments and all above them innovative topics that we have achieved in our RegTech lab over the last 3 years. Before we start and go deep dive, please, if you have any questions, please use the chat function to bring up these questions, and we answer this later after the session. So now, together with Anna Werner and Christian Schmiel, we would like to give you some exciting insights on the topic of RegTech. But we start a brief introduction to our today's speakers. Anna, give a short introduction to yourself, please.
Thank you very much. Hello. Hi, everyone. Very happy to be on board for today's webinar, for today's session, talking about RegTech best practices. Really a topic that is core to my heart, I'd say. I've been with Deloitte for nearly 4 years now, developing the RegTech practice for our firm in a number of member firms, and one of the initiators of the RegTech Lab. I'm currently a manager in Peter Schart's team in the financial crime practice that we have, and really have a strive for compliance innovation topics, which is also how I got to know Christian Schmiel back in the days. Christian, I'm handing over to you for a brief introduction.
Thank you so much, Anna, and also hello from my side, from the very sunny Leipzig here in Germany. My name is Christian Schmiel, and I'm the founder and chief innovation officer of the whole WebShield group. And well, I'm a fraud examiner by profession, and for the last 20 years, I've been working in the field of risk management, compliance, and anti-fraud management. Well, I know the Deloitte team for a few years meanwhile, and me personally, I'm responsible for the areas of product innovation and education, and I'm therefore very much delighted to present to you today's the solutions that we created together.
Thanks, Christian. Thanks, Anna. And last but not me, I'm Peter Schardt. I'm about over 6 years at Deloitte. I'm the head of the financial crime and the RegTech lab here within Germany. And we hope that we show you something interested, focus about what we developed with WebShield and in the RegTech lab. And hey, let's start. So why is RegTech the future of compliance? RegTech provides the opportunity to investigate and mitigate things before the risk escalate. RegTech uses many cutting-edge technologies such as AI, artificial intelligence, big data, cloud computing, machine learning, to name a few, which ensure companies are more effective in reaching regulatory compliance. RegTech has helped to minimize the risk of human errors by automating the processes. RegTech is an emerging industry that uses technology to help organizations avoid compliance risk and enhance regulatory processes. But why? RegTech systems monitor the current state of compliance against upcoming regulations, as well as real-time compliance. So that's why RegTech is the future of compliance. And these 3 points encourage us to open a Deloitte RegTech lab in Frankfurt almost 3 years ago. We started, or was founded, in a small room in the Frankfurt office of Deloitte. And after many of our clients had asked for technical solutions to a regulatory environment. Our tried and tested method for develop tailor-made solutions for our clients' pain points is the sandboxing approach. We use this sandboxing approach in a regulatory context to improve our assets and services, client experience, and operative. Anna will give you some more information about the sandboxing approach later. Another important success factor is our journey, our cooperation partners. You hear Christian. Christian is one of our most important, and I would say the best partner we have at the moment in the RegTech lab is WebShield, with whom we developed 2 very successful assets at the beginning. The success of these cooperations lay in the excellent distribution of tasks. We, Deloitte, brought the regulatory knowledge, especially the anti-financial crime knowledge, and WebShield is a comprehensive expertise in development of technical tools in the regulatory environment. Our first step was to develop a transaction monitoring asset with a large German bank we call it PayTracer. The second successful development was the asset VCU, Versatile Customer Underwriting, our client-tailored solution to ensure efficient enhanced due diligence by screening multiple data sources on natural persons and corporate entities. Christian will show you the best-selling asset with you on the page tracer later. So, Anna, can you give us a deep dive? Why is this modernization so important and how the RegTech Lab works at the moment?
Perfect. Thank you very much, Peter. More than happy to do that. Again, so the core foundation for RegTech development is a need, our pain points on client side. I think Peter just already introduced that quite well with our sandboxing approach and how we work as part of the RegTech Lab. And looking at the current regulatory compliance space that we see out in the market, also in the banking sector, it's usually the same types of pain points that we face. It's quite interesting when talking with our clients about RegTech solutions. Many of them come to us and they have the same issues and they want RegTech, and they tell us, Deloitte, please be the RegTech consultant for us, and Deloitte RegTech Lab, do you have the right solutions? Then we ask the client back, hey, what do you actually understand under the buzzword RegTech? And only very few of them can give us a comprehensive answer to that question. So you see, compliance modernization is something that is needed on all ends, and I think this is also very well described by the figures that you see here on this slide. You have an increasing amount of regulatory amendments, of regulations cross-national. And looking, for instance, at many of our clients that we currently work with in the RegTech space, it's not only the regulations in your headquarter that are of interest to you, but maybe also in the subsidiary that you hold in Asia or in the US or in some other Americas function. And I think we do know that the increasing amount of regulation definitely is a force, and the regulators, also the very well-known BaFin here in Germany, talking from the German end, is not really making it easy for banks, for our clients. So this is one of the major pain points that we see. On the other side, we have an increasing amount of administrative, really non-analytical activities that need to be done within the banks as well. So AML activities, and I think we are all very well aware of that, hold or bind a number of FTEs, a number of resources. Just to give you some best practice examples, looking in the financial crime investigation space, we work together with a client that has over 200 people just working in the investigation environment on pulling down the alerts, and that is simply too many FTEs, too many resources that could actually be used for quality enhancing work, that could be used for the compliance work that really creates an impact, that needs the know-how from experienced compliance professionals. Then, and that goes along with the GRC 10 to 15% that you see here. We also know that we have procedural gaps. So looking at many of our clients at the moment, we see many siloed processes within the compliance environment. We also see departments not necessarily talking to each other that should be talking to one another. And these siloed processes, not only within one bank itself or within one institution itself, but cross-institution, on a cross-institutional base, really do not make it easy for some of our clients, and really ask for compliance modernization at that stage. Then, looking at the banking sector specifically, we have a number of new competitors out in the market, and fintechs, we are very well aware of that. And we have nice examples here in the German space, such as Trade Republic currently coming up, and N26, which you might know. Are also banks that require RegTech solutions, but are somehow in some sense maybe a little bit more progressive, rather than really established M&Es, established banks, and really drive that innovation force on another level. And then I think one very crucial factor when it comes to the client compliance state that we look at is really outdated data infrastructures, outdated IT infrastructures. I think you're very well aware that there are a number of clients that, or a number of banks also in the German space, but also on a DCE level, Deloitte Central Europe level, that really use siloed systems, outdated infrastructures that have a number of sources, and there's the perfect idea of the one golden source, talking about the RegTech space, where you can basically pull all your data from. But this is what many of our clients lack, and simply in the KYC, in the know your customer space, that we are very active with, and with many of our RegTech solutions as well, and we'll be talking about that in just a second. you have over 200 different systems in place, and that really calls for scattered processes. And I think that RegTech can create great benefits here. What's really important to understand is the compliance modernization doesn't just happen when you implement your first RegTech solution. It is also a topic of culture change. It is a topic of mindset from the workforce. But we'll be talking about some of the potentials that RegTech holds, and actually also try to give you some actual live insights into RegTech solutions to avoid what has been happening to us with many of our initial workshops in the RegTech lab, when the clients came to us, wanted RegTech and didn't really know what was sitting behind it. We want to give you practical insights today, and I think that for all of these pain points that you see on this slide, and I do not need to go in too much detail with that, there are suitable RegTech solutions out in the market, and they can work effectively if it really has the right operating model. So talking about the RegTech lab maybe very briefly and where the whole idea comes from. We quickly want to introduce our idea. Peter just introduced himself quite well as the head of the RegTech lab, initiator of the RegTech lab, an idea that started, I'd say, 3 years ago in Frankfurt. It was a Frankfurt-based lab initially, and we've now also bound to many other nations and many other cities also within Germany. But it was a Frankfurt-based idea. And again, we have come from the anti-financial crime sector. And in the anti-financial crime sector, you have many efficiency gaps. You have many of the pain points that I was just briefly talking about. And of course, our clients ask for suitable solutions in that space and want to know what really sits behind this new buzzword RegTech. So what do we do on our end? What do we do as the RegTech lab? We bring together the regulatory pain points from our clients with the right compliance solutions. Looking at the compliance solutions that many of our clients currently have in place, you see really, well, out-of-the-box solutions, actually. So we do have clients that maybe use only 60% of their big compliance monitoring software that they currently have in place effectively, and the other 40% are just crossed out. This, of course, also has monetary impacts, and we know about the cost pressures in the regulatory space. So what do we do at the RegTech lab? We have the so-called sandboxing approach. In the introduction, Peter was just saying generically that this is the mantra that we have at the RegTech lab, and it has been following us since the initiation 3 years ago. So sandboxing is a term that you might know from regulators such as the Financial Conduct Authority in the UK, the Hong Kong Monetary Authority, or also the Singaporean Authority. Luxembourg is also going quite strong on that. Not so much in Germany. Sandboxing really means, for those of you that haven't heard of it yet, sandboxing means to create a safe space, for instance, for banks to really experiment with RegTech, with new technologies in the compliance space. And when it comes to new technologies and the data that we usually work with, which is quite sensitive, many of our clients are really risk averse when it comes to new technical solutions, a little bit scared, and these sandboxing approaches really close the barriers that you currently see in the space, and really make sure that our clients become well aware of what is out in the market in the RegTech space and how they can be using the solutions. So on the left-hand side, you see how we practice the sandboxing approach. To us, it really means creating agile solutions that are very much linked to the customer pain points. Meaning, for instance, to put it into practice, when a client comes to us and says, "Hey, Deloitte RegTech Lab, I want to reduce false positives in the monitoring or KYC space," then this is not enough. False positives, everyone has false positives, and this is not enough to find the right RegTech solution. You really need to specify what your issue in the false positive process is to then find the right solution with supervised, unsupervised machine learning mechanisms, making sure that it all goes hand in hand in your compliance processes. How do we do that? We work together with RegTech vendors. Now, thinking about Deloitte in first stance, you might not be thinking of the big software company. I didn't think of that either when I first joined Deloitte, and the world has changed since. So what do? We cooperate with third parties such as WebShield, today represented by the CEO, Christian Schmiel, who will be talking later, and many other vendors that we have in our portfolio. In total, the RegTech Lab has over 40 different cooperation partners whom we work together with on various solutions. And I'll be giving representative insights to some of them today. So we pull the solutions from external vendors. But we do not only pull the existing solution from the external vendor, we try to put in our regulatory, our compliance know-how, our input, the experience that we had working on many manual-driven projects in many German banks and cross-national banks, and really try to create new solutions together with our RegTech cooperation partners that actually most of the time then also hold the Deloitte branding, and which you can then well put in place in your institution to really make sure that you increase efficiencies in the compliance space. Bundled is a very important buzzword. So you might be well aware that the Deloitte has advanced in the innovation space very heavily recently. Looking at recent Gartner rankings, I think they're very representative of this as well. We do have AI studios, analytics institutes, robotics institutes, and we use all of these. We really use the know-how, the expertise that we have Deloitte internally, put it together with the expertise that we have also from the legal Deloitte side, and of course from the compliance experts, really making sure that we find the best fit solution for you. And then it's usually ends up in a vast portfolio of managed risk services, meaning many of the clients come to us these days and are showing more and more interest in managed services, meaning they simply want to offboard the services that are currently very repetitive, manual driven to us, but they want to do that in a possibly lean way using technology like RegTech. So we offer managed risk services around RegTech as well. And what is, I think, one of the major USPs that we have as a RegTech lab, and which has been very representative in the past for us, is our modular payment or cost structure that we have, meaning for all of the solutions that Deloitte offers, we do not work as via license fees, as you know from many other established software providers, but we work with the so-called pay-per-use cost structures, meaning you only actually pay for the investigation that you want, or for the number of investigations that you are trying to do, meaning we really want to avoid these out-of-the-box licenses that we see with many of the complex compliance technologies that our clients currently have in place. One important thing that I want to mention, though, and I think there's always a big misunderstanding when it comes to RegTech. To me, RegTech creates another efficiency layer. It won't substitute your existing compliance technology, the big monitoring or screening system that you have in place, but it can create more efficiencies on that end, meaning making the results that you get out of your monitoring or screening system more valuable to you as a firm or in your investigation team. Peter has just been mentioning some of the technologies that we work for. And before I go in detail with that, I quickly want to give you some insights into our round circle here. This is one of the slides that is always quite representative of the RegTech lab. Many of our clients know it already. It again sums up what I've been saying just now. What is quite interesting is that we noticed in the past that it helps to get our clients a little bit out of the box in a location sense as well when talking about RegTech, meaning it's not always best when talking about innovation, when discussing innovation, staying in the same old outdated meeting rooms, but really going into co-working spaces, or these days with COVID happening and events like these happening virtually, we also use platforms such as Miro or Mural to really give our clients a more innovative experience when going through RegTech workshops with us. And at the end of the day, we see ourselves as a, I'd say, RegTech integrator, reg integrator, catalyzer, incubator, meaning it's not only for us about selling our services. Of course, we are a consultancy firm, we need to make our money, but we notice that there's a gap in the RegTech space, and this gap is currently bridged by no one between the client side and the regulators, and then you have the RegTech firms, the RegTech startups, companies out in the market. So we really try to bring all these parties together. And if we then come out with a nice RegTech service, that is great. But any one of you that is interested in just a generic RegTech workshop, trying to get more insights into the topic and really understanding where the potentials lie with RegTech, we'd be very happy to be doing that, and actually doing that on a very regular basis with many of our clients. So what's important to understand, and I always also explain that to our German clients that we have when it comes to RegTech topics, RegTech is not a topic that is specifically located in Germany, I'd say. And you could think that, thinking that maybe we are not the most innovative country out in the market. But when I look into the RegTech space at the moment, I see many of the hot RegTech solutions coming from the, of course, Asian space, but also Australia, Italy is actually quite advanced, UK in general, of course, the Americas, Canada, US. A lot is happening in the RegTech space there, and we really try to leverage the potentials that we see from all of these firms, meaning that we pull solutions from also our other member firms within the Deloitte network into this RegTech space, and really collaborate on a very enhanced level with our French, Italian, Luxembourg, Spanish, UK, and many other colleagues in our Deloitte network, which is a great asset for us, I think, as well. And of course, RegTech is a topic in each of these teams, just in a different language. And usually the solution that is of efficiency gain in Germany will also be of efficiency gains for our Italian colleagues. So sandboxing for agile solution development, I've just generically introduced how we work with this with our sandboxing approach. Just want to give you a quick deep dive into it, because it will be of relevance to also understand how our solutions are put together later on, when you'll get some live insights with live demos. So stay tuned for that. That will be very exciting, I think. So the first crux is identifying the client's pain point. Before I was giving the example with the false positive pain point that we see. Then we usually, in the next step, go over to the presentation of generic showcases, meaning first you need to show the client what is actually capable with RegTech, what he can do. And we, of course, have generic showcases in our portfolio just to show you where the efficiency gains lie. And we also give an introduction into the different technologies, meaning what really is machine learning, what really is supervised, unsupervised machine learning, what is OCR, RPA, blockchain, and all of these buzzwords that you hear about in the compliance space. And I think there's a lot of optimization potential looking into many compliance functions. And I think one of the first issues is to really put some order into this so-called buzzword jungle that you always see when it comes to technologies. Then we try to specify the client request. We do that as part of design thinking sessions in the RegTech lab, like I said, either in innovation facilities or in innovation workshops virtually, and then try to develop a client-specific offering together with our maybe external cooperation partner, if we work together with one at this stage, and the client. And what we then also offer, which is quite interesting for many of our clients, are so-called trial periods. Meaning you want to, and that is sandboxing, you want to experiment with the RegTech asset that you see there, and trial runs are crucial for that. They've shown great success with also many other technical use cases and user stories that you've seen in the past, and it really helps us to specify the offering of the asset, the solution for you, really making sure that it is tuned, that it has a fit into to your IT infrastructure and everything. And then best case, it works with, or we end up with a nice implementation project. So I'm coming back to the figures, because we want to put RegTech into practice today. That was the title of the session, and this is what we promised here, so we'll be doing that. And what really is financial crime, counting the global loss of financial crime. We will be talking about 2 financial crime use cases actually today. This is why I'm giving a short financial crime intro here. And I think you know these figures. If you're in the banking sector, in the compliance banking sector, you've heard of them, and maybe you've been affected by one of them in either or other way. But we all know that money laundering, fraud, thefts are major issues, and it's really hard to combat them. And again, RegTech will provide an assistant layer there to you. It won't take all the FTEs or all your team resources, all the experienced compliance staff away. You need them for the tasks that really require investigative know-how, but so much is possible with technologies these days, especially when it comes to repetitive tasks. And this is where the potential basically lies. I think a very interesting figure, and I was very shocked by that, also looking at the recent Thomson Reuters reports. I always very much enjoy reading them, and they've recently published their next one. So I highly suggest for all of you to have a look into it. It's quite interesting also when it comes to RegTech topics. Is the screening challenge, meaning that 41% of institutions, 41% of clients were actually never screened in an institution. And that's figure is just out of the box for me, working in the screening and monitoring environment. We of course know that you regularly screen and monitor as part of the due diligence processes also your high risk candidates, or the one that may hold greater risks because there are sanctions or politically exposed or whatever. But as part of customer onboarding, you need to screen each and every one of your clients, whether it's a natural person or a legal entity. And there's a big lack. These figures, by the way, come from a global scale, so they're not Germany specific. I do not want to draw black stories here for Germany. These are global figures, but it seems to be an issue across the globe, across the world. And then also looking at the numbers when it comes to the trillions of losses, financial monetary losses due to turnover when it comes to financial crime topics. I think these figures just speak for themselves. I just wanted to show them to you because they are quite quite interesting, and we'll now be getting into we are now jumping into the RegTech. So anti-financial crime. I've been mentioning some of the issues on my first slide when it came to the compliance modernization is no longer optional field. But first one, investigation failures. If you are somehow engaged with the investigation function, you know that, and I think we all know that persons or investigators are no machines. Errors happen, and you miss relevant information as part of your investigation, whatever investigation it is, whether it's client onboarding, screening, or whatever, in whatever stage you are. But you have failures, and no person works like a machine. Again, both sides have their benefits and their blank spots, but no person works on a 24/7 basis like a machine, and mistakes happen, and they can be fined. You'll find high penalties. We've had very good examples of that very recently, not only in Germany, also looking into the French space, for instance, and the regulators really do not or try to do harsh follow-ups when it comes to these failures, and really creates a monetary burden if you're affected by a penalty. And then the poor data quality, I've been mentioning that briefly before, so I don't need to get in detail on that. I think what's important to understand when talking about the RegTech space, when talking about RegTech topics, RegTech requires data, and RegTech requires good data. And that's where actually the first crux starts when implementing RegTech solutions at many of our clients, because they provide us with KYC information, and we do have the 70-year-old student in there that has a monthly income of 200K, and he has not been caught by any screening or monitoring system beforehand. And poor data quality is a major crux, but you can work on it with the right solutions. Machine learning holds great potential when it comes to clearing up your compliance data these days. We have some very exciting use cases on that topics, and discuss that also very regularly, especially with many of our larger banks that also have the scattered, the complex IT infrastructures that I was mentioning earlier. The siloed compliance functions I was already talking about as well. And well, the time-consuming extraction, let me elaborate on that very, very quickly. I mean, as part of a proper investigation, it takes time. Doing the adverse media, the background check, doing the sanctions PEP adverse media but also, for instance, pulling as part of your due diligence, pulling ownership data or ownership information from corporate documents. Many of these, for instance, sanctions PEP adverse media lists are currently provided by large list providers, LexisNexis, Dow Jones, Orbis has an exciting database, but still it's a manual process. And then creating, if you do find a gap, or if there is a high risk alert, a high risk indicator, then you come to the stage of SAR filing, suspicious activity report filing. This again binds a lot of time, it's very time consuming for an investigator. All of these time-consuming, quite repetitive, and simple tasks are perfect use cases for technologies. I know I'm repeating myself on that point, but it's so simple actually, and it's really important to point it out for many of the people that we talk to about RegTech. And yeah, so time-consuming extractions are one of the major sources for RegTech to come in place, and then regulatory scrutiny, we were talking about that earlier as well. So I'd now like to hand over actually to Christian Schmier, CEO of WebShield, one of our greatest cooperation partners so far. And I really like that quote, collaboration is key to fighting financial crime. Christian, maybe you can quickly elaborate on our journey together as well. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to your insights on this topic.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Anna. Yes, well, talking about our collaboration or our journey together, this basically started round about 3 years ago, where Peter's team basically identified WebShield as one of the possible partners in the RegTech team, given the fact that we at WebShield provide software solutions for global financial institutions when it comes to the area of holistic due diligence and monitoring actions. What does that mean in detail? So basically, we provide a software solution that in real time takes over the evaluation on how risky a new client, a new merchant that you're processing actually is, and does that in the typical 5 risk areas, whether that is the so-called money laundering risk, transaction laundering risk, reputation risk, the associated content risk, and obviously the financial risk that comes with these kinds of entities. Now, Peter, of course, did something very, very smart. He identified basically the RegTech space as an area with extremely fragmentation when it comes to the associated service providers out there. And for us at WebShield, the last 3 years were really a very interesting journey, as Peter's team really understands to enable or to work as an eye-opener. On our side, for now over a decade, we have been focusing with our software solutions very, very specific to the so-called merchant acquiring space, so the credit card industry, where our solutions are being utilized. And here with a very strong focus on possible high-risk entities. So for example, cryptocurrency entities out there, pharmaceuticals, and so on. So everywhere where a specific risk might be inherent to the financial institution. Now, the great thing of Peter's team is they simply changed our focus. They shifted it. And what we did is we took specific indicators and software solutions that we already created for this very specific credit card area, adapted it, and shifted the focus over to something completely new. And the great thing about the RegTech team is that it brings not only decades of knowledge in this specific field, especially when it comes to anti-financial crime, but they are really so close to the client that they fully understand and grasp the associated pain point, and therefore can bring together on the one side the client needs, and on the other side the service provider who's able to fulfill that. And this being said, let me give you a quick introduction to one of our first collaborations, the so-called PayTracer solution. Now, PayTracer was actually born out of the need that there was a very large money laundering scandal where an involvement of various financial institutions were given. And we all know how it works when it comes to investigations in this specific field. It is usually a very, very manual process that requires hours of online investigation, putting together and pulling together all the necessary information. And what we did with PayTracer is we created a forensic tool that is able to enrich SWIFT transactions with publicly available information. What does that mean? Let me give you a very, very brief example. Let's assume you are wiring money to a company. The information that, for example, the correspondent bank in this context sees is extremely limited. Usually the name of the sender and receiver of the wire, the associated amount, and specific tasks that are given. But there's usually not more information out there. Now, PayTracer takes that little information and enriches it with additional databases, such as company house databases to identify associated addresses, contact details, involved directors, and so on, and therefore enables you to run through thousands, if not millions, of transactions and identify where are nods, where are people collaborating, where are specific pain points and issues in this whole overview. Obviously, we prepared a little video for you so that you actually can see what is happening. And Anna, if you could start that one, I'd be happy to talk you through it. Now, the great thing about PayTracer is there's no installation needed. You can use it as a software as a service, and it comes not only with an analysis of the associated transaction, but also with the capability of creating specific filters. So for example, you would like to identify where are entities that I'm doing business with where there's a risk that these are shell companies, or if there are indications for shell companies, how likely is it that that person that has been identified either as the director or beneficial owner acts as a nominee? The great thing is really the software pulls together all that information and gives you the capability of really surfing through the data to see exactly who belongs together, and enables clients to identify things such as round-tripping transactions. Where are shell companies involved? You can basically work through the whole case, add any kind of comments to that, and massively reduce the necessary time to go through all these transactions, to conduct all these manual workloads, and to get then a full picture of what is going on. This is usually a task that takes days to perform, especially if you're not looking at a specific entity, but at portfolios that need to be worked through. And here, PayTracer is a real great solution to speed up this complete process and to identify what's actually going wrong within your portfolio. Now, unfortunately, you can guess we're not able to name drop, but as you can imagine, there are quite a lot of companies and financial institutions out there that are in need of exactly these kinds of technologies. And just as Anna said, really to manage their employees to focus on what is actually really going on, what is important here, and not to spend all the necessary time with just trying to juggle back the associated data. So that was our first success together with Peter's team. And then another need was born about two years ago, where it became necessary that due to regulations, especially within Germany, notaries would have the obligation, obviously, to conduct a very thorough due diligence action, especially in the real estate business. Now, obviously, there are service providers out there where you can simply retrieve the information about who's the ultimate beneficial owner of a company. But the issue about that is in many instances, or if not in all instances, that information is always database driven. Meaning for a notary who actually needs the current data of that day, it would not be sufficient to rely in any way on database knowledge when it comes to beneficial owners. No, in their cases, it would be appropriate and needed that they have direct access to companies' houses and therefore can obtain the necessary information in there. Now, in a perfect world, the entity that the notary would be dealing with is, obviously localized in his jurisdiction, has the shareholder sitting there, and it's very, very obvious who's the actual beneficial owner. But that's unfortunately in many cases not just like that. Often you see that shareholders go across jurisdictions, making it very, very hard for a user to really go through the whole structure to obtain all the necessary documents and so on. And that's exactly where versatile customer underwriting, or VCU, really comes to play. Now, VCU has been designed to deliver in real time to the notaries and, of course, also other clients in this specific sector, such as the public sector, real estate, or consumer goods, with a technology that enables you to, on the one side, obtain the necessary incorporation documents and shareholder information, and that across various jurisdictions until to that point where you're able to identify the associated beneficial owner. And that, of course, is done in a quite holistic way. So throughout the whole process, this is being enriched with additional techniques such as adverse list screening, PEP screening, sanctioned list screening, and automated background research that is being conducted online in various languages, but also additional indicators that, for example, highlight how likely it is that you're actually dealing with a shell company. And also here, we would love to give you a quick introduction and let you see how that software actually works. Again, just like with PayTracer, there is obviously no need of any kind of installation on the side of the client. And we created it in a setup that you can basically have various cases directly in here. Obviously, in the beginning, we had a strong focus on notaries, therefore this case setup. In here, you basically have two possibilities. On the one side, the standard approach would be that this is the real-time version. So basically, you can actually work directly on this case. And as an alternative, obviously also a service component. Now here, this would be what the client does. In this case, he simply chooses the jurisdiction, provides the name of the entity that he wants to screen in this regard. This then automatically triggers our database, and you can directly choose the associated entity where you would like to retrieve the documents and conduct the check. You simply click on save, and in that second already, the system is conducting the first real-time jobs. So you might see this here on the right side where it says zu bearbeiten, so in progress. Right now, he's conducting 5 jobs, which compile of getting in connection with the associated company's house, retrieving the incorporation documents, retrieving the shareholder documents, and then using AI to identify the necessary parties within these documents, which often can be quite tricky, especially given the fact that in many cases shareholder information is, for example, being passed on in handwriting. So this is quite challenging for the system. But as you can see, due to the need of notaries, we implemented a secondary verification process where the notary can basically verify, yes, the system has identified the correct managing director of this company and verifies this, this whole thing, and then can go over to the verification of the shareholder documents. Now, here in this specific case, you will see that there is no direct shareholder to this company, but that it is a UK company that holds 100% of the shares of this German one. Also, this is no issue at all. Again, here, the associated shareholder can simply be verified in the system. And just by confirming this, the system then again triggers the necessary response to the UK incorporation house. And also from here, as you can see, 2 jobs are processing, obtains the necessary incorporation documents to verify if this is now the last step to be able to verify the beneficial owner. Now, whilst this is happening, another great thing is being carried out. So the system here also conducts necessary checks regarding sanction list screening, PEP list screening, adverse media list screening. It conducts the automated background research, and then finally compiles all that information and creates a final PDF report that really contains all the necessary information regarding who's the beneficial owner, what is the associated structure of this specific case, with any kind of strong indications, for example, a high probability of a virtual presence. Then, of course, all the necessary information that has been obtained throughout this investigation, the necessary costs that would be applied to conduct such an investigation, including, of course, all the obtained documents throughout this process, meaning incorporation documents, shareholder documents, as well as additional information when it comes, for example, to the virtuality of such a address. Now, as you can see, the really great thing here is that this is a task that usually takes about an hour, 1.5, sometimes even longer, especially if you're looking on entities across various jurisdictions. And this software solution really speeds up the complete process, enables you to obtain documents from companies' houses in real time, and therefore enables analysts to compile their needs when it comes to AML screenings fairly quicker and with a very high precision. This is basically the version that an analyst can use by himself, but of course, Deloitte pointed out that there are specific client bases where a service component is the way to go. So also here an adaptation has been provided so that the clients solely have to provide the name of the entity, and then basically the service team takes over and provides the necessary information within the agreed SLAs. Yes, and that's basically a quick overview about the 2 tools that the RegTech team and WebShield created so far together. And you can guess we are very curious on seeing what's up to come in the future.
Most definitely. Perfect. Thank you. Thank you very much for the brief introduction of 2 of our assets here, of 2 of our solutions. Very much also looking forward to questions from the chat box, again, pointing out the functionality here. And before we move on to one of our next use cases that we want to present to you today in the reporting environment, I quickly want to answer one of the questions which we've already received, and I think it fits quite well into the portfolio here. Before I do that, short teaser on VCU and also PayTracer. A lot of developments have happened here recently. So if you're interested in the solutions, we'd be happy to give you our really up-to-date demos. And we are progressing on a continuous basis with the number of clients that we currently have onboarded for both solutions. And I think what's also quite interesting to understand is the demo video that you just saw was in German language, but of course all of our tools, all of our assets really function in both languages, English and German for sure, also on the way of translating into French, Spanish and many other languages. So it's quite interesting what is happening here at the moment, meaning with the clients that currently have the assets in place, we're not really bound to German institutions. Yes. Okay, so yeah, what other use cases do we see in the compliance space? I think you've noticed so far we are very much bound to our AML, anti-financial crime, CTF space, and we love that very much because it holds great potentials for RegTech. But there are a number of other use cases that are very much affected by RegTech and where RegTech holds great potentials that we also work with. Unfortunately, we've not brought any teasers on that, but that was one of the questions in the chat box, if I saw that correctly. Does RegTech for us go beyond these spaces? It does. For sure. So we have various innovation streams as part of the RegTech Lab where we develop assets and tools. For this purpose, for this webinar today, we've chosen anti-financial crime as a topic. But of course, for instance, we've also developed assets and solution services in the environment of regulatory reporting, for instance, where we've come up with a DQ validator, a machine learning based reporting tool, which is also quite interesting. And then RegTech, of course, also holds great potentials in the regulatory change screening space, for instance. Looking at some of the largest providers in the RegTech space that you see here out in the market at the moment, I'd be thinking of providers such as Cube, for instance, meaning those software firms that actually analyze what the regulatory change, and Cube is also a cooperation partner of the RegTech Lab, which is why I'm mentioning them, but that analyze what sort of regulatory change is happening out in the market, what sort of regulatory change is not only happening at my, for instance, German-based headquarter firm, but also in my subsidiary in Singapore. What regulatory changes are they affected by? And what do the regulatory amendments that we see, for instance, to a money laundering directive in Singapore, how do they affect my internal processes? Where do I need to adjust my internal policies, procedures? RegTech today goes so far that it tells you, no, you do not only need to amend, you need to adjust to this new regulatory amendment, watch out, it's coming. It also tells you what you need to do specifically within your firm, what needs to be adjusted to make sure that you stay compliant on a long term. So regulatory change screening is, I think, a super interesting environment when it comes to RegTech, and one that I very much enjoy working with as well. And then one of the latest use cases and fields that we look into is sustainability, corporate social responsibility. And I think, yeah, Lieferkettengesetz, for those of you, or for those of us in the German audience here, know very much about it. It's a thing that affects all of us at the moment. And CSR sustainability also has relevance for the RegTech space, meaning bringing again transparency in your business partner structure. You as a multinational firm want to understand who's the producer of your small hardware icon that you use in that you construct in the cars that you build, for instance, and that is constructed in India. Who is my Indian business partner there? Who is that person? Is it a natural person, legal entity? VCU, again, is a great tool to do a background check in that environment. And then we will also work on some other indexing tools in the CSR and sustainability space, meaning we see high linkage between compliance and these topics these days. Very interesting as well, just to give you a brief teaser. You'll be reading more about that, and Peter will be talking briefly about it in our trend report to be published very soon, where we talk not only about anti-financial crime use cases, but about many others that we are currently working on with our clients. So feel free to have a look at that. I hope that answered the question very briefly that we saw out in the chat. RegTech goes beyond anti-money laundering, yes. To us, however, I've brought another know your customer use case because I think it's also a great example to show how RegTech can provide efficiencies. And this is a natural language generation based use case. So NLG, NLP, natural language processing, natural language generation, I think one of the most high potential relevant technologies that we see out in the RegTech space, not only at the moment, but for a couple of months and years now. And for instance, within the KYC, know your customer environment, NLG, NLP can hold great potential when it comes to your high-risk summary reports that you need to do on your, actually in Germany, on a yearly basis on your high-risk clients. All of these reports can be automated. Another very interesting use case that we work on here is SAR filing, suspicious activity report filing. I've been mentioning that earlier. We all know that it's a process that binds a lot of manpower and that is very complex, and the SAR filing report takes sometimes hours to be filled. And there are many manual and repetitive steps in it. For instance, looking at the GoAML template that we see across European, there are many fields that can be pre-populated, machine learning based. Then you have the Beschreibung des Sachverhaltes in Germany as part of the GoAML template, or the description of the case. Again, an NLG, NLP can really create an additional layer there by at least pre-writing NLG based on the information that it can pull from various systems and from various data sources, the relevant information on the case background, so that I, as an investigator working in that ZAR filing in that very moment, really only need to do the manual QS and add any additional information that are of relevance for me before I send out the ZAR filing report to in Germany, the FIU, Financial Intelligence Unit. By the way, we work together with the Financial Intelligence Unit in Germany and also regulators from other authorities currently in the making for some of our assets, which is quite interesting as well, meaning they're very supportive of what we do here with the RegTech Lab, and really see, assisting layers here, which can really make work a lot easier, and many of our compliance functions. They are very active in this space. I hear a mic on in the background. Maybe that person wants to quickly mute themselves. Don't know whether I only heard that. Again, for the industry set that such a KYC automation asset is of relevance for is, of course, the financial services space. But again, what I want to point out, I was mentioning that in the beginning, we work along the pay-per-use and also managed service models. Again, this is a pay-per-report model, meaning you do not sign a license that says, okay, KYC reporting automation will help you to pre-fill 10,000 reports on a yearly basis. You only pay for the number of reports that you actually ask for. So I think that's another interesting use case. I could talk forever about energy and NLP at the moment, but I'd be happy to, of course, do that with some of you in a follow-up RegTech workshop if we get the chance to discuss. And this is now also my closing word before handing over to Peter for some last insights.
Yeah, thank you, Anna. Thank you, Christian. Thank you for the impressive presentation you did. Yes, finally, you see it on the screen. I'll give you a brief preview of our publication, what we do, what we publish in our RegTech trend report in July 21. It contains a lot of interesting information about, and coming back to the beginning of this session, what is the future of compliance? And in this RegTech report, you see and you can read about what is the future of compliance. And we have some interested reports, some interesting things. What is the new technology we're using in the future? And if you want it, go to the RegTech Lab website. You see the link here, and then you can get it. Yes, if you have any, thank you for your interest, and we are happy to answer any questions. Someone answered it, and now open for the questions.
Maybe everyone is also caught in their Friday afternoon vibe.
Did we have any questions in the chat? Did we not answer at the moment? Something new?
No, we had the one about what other RegTech areas do we see besides AML, CFT, and we've briefly answered that.
Yeah, you answered that, like reg monitoring, chain screening, compliance process optimization, sustainability, all that's what
yeah, and I think the DQ validator is really an exciting asset as well. You have a short tease on the DQ reporting validator as well in the trend report to be published.
Yeah. So, for example, you're working at the moment for a RegTech reg monitoring asset. And I think after the summer we have one of these assets and bringing it in a pilot to the customer, and then we can show in one of the next sessions what is the reg monitoring asset we have built and we have developed.
Again, with many of the presentations that you saw here just now, of course, these are just some brief teasers. We would love to show you some live insights. That's what we usually work with. Talking to Peter and Christian, they know very well about that. I hate slides. I'm not the typical consultant. I actually love giving real-time insights into the assets that we develop. So would be happy to do that as a follow-up.
Okay. Is there another question? Or?
can leave the chat open maybe. Looking into the direction of the organizers here.
No, no new questions, I see. Okay. So we'll wait about 2-3 minutes, and then if there are no questions, I think we can close the webinar.
Exactly.
One thing is very important. Everything and every asset, as you've seen at the moment, is there are no licensing costs for the clients. They are only pay-per-use, pay-per-report, per assessments, or so on costs. So the clients are paying for that what they are using in a month, in a year. So that's what's very important for us to go, not doing any license costs for any assets we develop.
I think one quite interesting, maybe asking into the audience as well. I do not, unfortunately, we cannot see where our attendees come from. I just see that we have a very large number of listeners here. Maybe some of you already have RegTech in place and latest RegTech technologies. So if you'd be interested in sharing some insights, feel free to do so. We're always keen to get insights on how progressive the RegTech status is. And we know that it depends from member firm to member firm, from nation to nation, from banking institution to banking institution, from industry to industry. But if anyone wants to share their RegTech experience in the chat box, feel free to do that. We hope the session was insightful for sure. Maybe some of you have not had too many things to do yet with RegTech and will now be inspired by what they have seen and dive a little bit just deeper into it. I can highly, a number of trend reports, not only from our end, but from regulatory sides, from authority sides, also from our competitors, from the startups directly to look into. I think it's really interesting what is happening in the space. Do you envision compulsory uniform solutions for institutions? I think that's a very nice question that we see here. RegTech solutions in cooperation with regulators. That again goes hand in hand with the sandboxing approach that we were mentioning earlier, talking about that some regulators are way more progressive. To quickly read out the question, because I don't think everyone can read it. One of the audience members was asking, do you envision such a potential trajectory that RegTech solutions will be rolled out in cooperation with regulators, sort of compulsory uniform solutions for institutions? I hope so. I hope for better cooperation also on the regulatory and authority side when it comes to the actual development of RegTech solution. And I'd like to point out a model. I'm going back into the KYC space, which is quite interesting, and where you see best practices when it comes to such a scenario. That is Luxembourg, Switzerland, when it comes to so-called KYC shared platforms. I think we all know, and I had this slide on earlier, talking about cooperation is key to fighting financial crime. Some nations have already understood that sharing relevant KYC information across banking institutions really creates an impact, and the regulator has seen that as well. So they are creating so-called shared platforms or cloud infrastructures to really share the most relevant KYC data between institutions and not really keeping it in these siloed environments. And I think we already see that initiated in some nations and some jurisdictions. Not so much in Germany yet, unfortunately. But we envision great potential there. Again, for the shared platform methodology, I think we also have it in place at the moment in some Asian jurisdictions, and it's proven to be very successful, very effective, also when it comes to fighting financial crime. I hope to see this being rolled out also in nations like Germany on a larger scale. Banks here in Germany are talking more to each other now than they did 10 years ago, but we can also do that on a RegTech level, on a data shared platform boundary, and I think that would be very interesting. So yes, great potential, and that was just one exemplary use case that I was mentioning.
Yes.
I don't know, Christian, Peter, anything to add on from your end to this?
No, if you have any questions, you can also send it us via email or give a call to us and we answer it to you. If you have feeling to get sessions about bigger sessions, and a session is longer about VCU or PayTracer, don't hesitate. Ask us. We do it for you. We are open for everything. We do a lot of presentations. Anna mentioned that in the past and also in the future for every member firm at the moment. Australia, South Africa, Japan, and so on. So don't hesitate to ask what we're doing. So if there are no questions, I think we can end and close this webinar. Thanks to that you are hearing to you. Thanks to Anna, thanks to Christian for presenting, and thanks. And bye-bye, have a nice weekend, and see you and hear you.
Have a nice weekend. Bye-bye.
Cheers, bye-bye.